Welcome to another Soccer Down Here 1v1. Time to catch up with Executive Vice President of the USL, Court Jeske, friend of the show and friend of the network. It has been too long to catch up. Court, good to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
All right. Reason we wanted to have you in this time is that the USL had some news that we wanted to address with the league, and it's a couple of relationships that have to do with expanding the media footprint and the exposure and the reach of the USL. And it has to do with the relationship with Flow and the relationship with Sirius XM. I guess let's start with the furthest away one, and then we'll work our way back to the satellite radio discussion. How did the discussion come about with Flow, and how did that all come to pass?
Yeah, it's a great question, and just for clarification with the listeners, so when we say Flow in this instance, we're talking about Flow with the W.
Right.
Is what I tell people versus the FLO, which is another over-the-top streaming subscription-based service here in the U.S. But Flow with a W, if you will, is one of the top sports providers throughout the Caribbean. I kind of relate it to, think about a TNT here and the way they cover the NBA and some other big events, or an NBCSN type offering. That through our partner Sport5, which is our international business partner that's focused on taking USL and the brand of USL around the globe for viewers, for players to raise awareness with them, and for coaches and agents and everyone else around the soccer ecosystem. We engaged with them about a year ago to start to take an ever-improving product that we have with USL and improving venues and player pool and just overall optics of the league. And how do we get that message out there? And so they were great, pitching us in front of all the right people throughout the globe. And during this pandemic, sometimes all clouds have a silver lining, right? And what we found was that our return to play in early July allowed for a lot of people, not just domestically but internationally, to sit up and say, oh yeah, I've heard a little bit about USL, but now I'm really interested. So this broadcaster that reaches 22 countries throughout the Caribbean, and very important from a soccer world, Jamaica and TNT, where we have a lot of players from those countries, they're going to be showing 6 to 8 matches per week right into households throughout the Caribbean, which is very, very important from a brand standpoint and an awareness standpoint. So far it has gone well. I know our players have very much enjoyed being able to share with friends and family that they're quote-unquote on the big stage. A lot of days for New York, it goes straight from a Champions League broadcast to a USL broadcast, so you can imagine the positioning that provides us there. And this is the start of many. We've got a lot of growth to do, and we have players from all over the world. We actually have 81 different nationalities playing in the USL Championship and the USL League One. So how do we make sure that the message that North American soccer is open for business and that USL is open for business gets out to all those individuals? So it's been really fun, and it's been fun to see on social media comments and engagement from those countries and territories where before fans would have to go to YouTube to watch that. So this is a big step forward for the league and the awareness throughout the CONCACAF region.
Logistically, and I guess I'm discussing the transmission element of it all. You'd mentioned YouTube in the past, and that's readily available through anyone with an IP and a laptop or a desktop or what have you. But when it comes to putting something on a broadcast network logistically, how difficult or different is that than doing it from an online idea? How much more effort is involved in attaching to a network that is in an entirely different region of the world?
Yeah, well, it is complicated, and I'll be the first to say that I am not a technical wizard. We've got some very smart people at the USL League office in Tampa that work with our production arm, USL Productions, and a company called Vista out of Fort Lauderdale that transmits our product all over the world. and specifically for this case throughout the Caribbean, if they get it to the appropriate people and then they handle dissemination. But I think any time that you elevate the platform that you're on or the number of people watching, there's just increased expectations, right? I think if we all think about if we go to YouTube and the signal goes down or a video doesn't play, you kind of move on, right? It's pretty easy to say, okay, well, that didn't work well, I'm not paying for it, whatever. But when you move, as we have, to paying platforms such as ESPN, ESPN Plus, Flow, XM Radio, you really, really have to up your game because you're not only representing the USL to our audience, but you're representing the USL to a potential audience and to a media partner as well. That is, paying for rights, and they have to see a return that is of premium quality. So I leave it to the technical guys to sort out the satellites and IP and fiber and all those fun things. I can barely get on this cell phone for this call. But we are excited about it. It's a new way that USL can be seen, heard, and understood throughout a very important region that we're targeting for growth.
And you bring up an interesting point where it's about, that the hardcore soccer fan, regardless of whether they're attached to a particular team that you might be having as a part of your broadcast element for any particular day, that they're going to be coming after the product. That they're going to be searching it out. But for that casual fan and for that prospective advertiser that you might want to bring into the fold, it does present that, there's no second chance to make a first impression kind of a thing, and especially when you're going into other parts of the world. And I think that it's part of the challenge of growth of any industry, but especially when you're talking about soccer fans in our conversation, bringing in that casual fan and that first-timer and keeping them and having the production quality that they can sit there and say, yeah, I'm going to come back and watch this. It's that first-timer that you want to keep and have them come back, I think, is just as important here.
Well, absolutely. Again, you said it best, John, that you never get the second chance to make a first impression. And, I spent a lot of time at MLS, and we would talk about this often, that, soccer fans are by nature, they are promiscuous, right? They will have a European team. They will have, in some cases, a Mexican team and a U.S. team, or domestic team, we should say. So we know that our fan in, let's say our fans in Memphis or in Birmingham or Las Vegas or Sacramento, they're all watching our matches that are on ESPN, or they're also on local TV in most cases. And then the next morning, or maybe that previous morning, they had watched an EPL game or a Liga MX game. And so we have to hold ourselves to a really high standard. It doesn't mean, and I tell our clubs this all the time, we don't have to spend what UEFA spends on a Champions League broadcast to have a premium product. At the end of the day, from a soccer standpoint, 90% of the picture comes from that main camera at center midfield, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we are really focused on doing that well, on having a clean field of play, honoring the game, honoring the players, and let the game speak for itself, we can come off with a very, very strong product. And our fans tell us that. And so we're really excited. I've been, since leaving Nashville in 2018, I've been at the league office for almost 2 years now. And it's kind of like if you ever watch those old MLS TV shows from the 90s or early 2000s compared to today. It doesn't look like the same league. I would just say even in the 2 years that we've gone through this media overhaul at USL, I could say that for a lot of our venues as well.
And you're talking about growth in USL Championship. It's USL League One, and it gives the soccer fan that idea of, okay, here's what it's like for me Then with the relationships that you have with Flow with a W and with ESPN Plus, you have both of these leagues, USL Championship and League One, where folks can sit there and they can see, okay, here's what it's like in this market. I know our team's going to be playing Team X next week. What's it like there? We're going to be playing this team in our group a little later on. What's it like there? They get to sample the growth across the board with these relationships that you have from a TV sense.
Yeah, it is. Look, when you make the commitment as a league to put every single match at the Championship and League One level on an ESPN Plus platform, or globally, even with a YouTube, there's no room to hide your warts, if you will. And we'll be the first to admit our broadcast is not perfect. We've got improvement that needs to happen. We have investment that needs to happen. But what is important to us, again, is that we honor the game. We're crisp, we're clean, and it's easy for fans to watch. And let the players do the talking, if you will. And so those kind of elements make us feel very, very strong about the position we're in today. Not only in 2020, which is obviously a complicated year, but how will that evolve over the next 2.5 years that we still have with ESPN, and make sure that we are expanding what the USL is and the USL message is in communities across the country.
And you get to do that also with the relationship with SiriusXM and SiriusXM FC. As I was returning from my USL Championship game, I'm hearing Reno 1868 on SiriusXM FC, and it's another step in the process. And for those of us who have those satellite radios, whether it's a device inside of our cars or inside of our homes where we get to sample what's going on, it's another element that adds to the portfolio of the USL, being able to do stuff like this. And when it popped up, basically, I hadn't seen the press release yet, full disclosure, but when it popped up, I'm like, okay, cool, that's really something cool that you can add to the portfolio.
Yeah, no, and shame on you for not seeing every single press release. The other thing I would say is we actually trialed some matches before we finalized the deal, and I think from SiriusXM and from the USL side, we wanted to experiment a little bit and see how it went. So our first match that we had was the Louisville Stadium opener back in July 12th, and that was actually the league's first ever triple cast. We had an ESPN2, ESPN Deportes, and SiriusXM all live at the same time, and so those matches went extremely well. And we love them as a partner. The XM 157 XMFC channel is one of the channels on SiriusXM that has one of the most avid fan bases. That if you think about it, if you want to listen to live soccer and you're in your car or on your streaming device, right? There's only a handful of ways we can do it here. Through listening to this show, through a few others that are popping up throughout the country, and then maybe a national player like XM. So we've got a game of the week this year. We've actually found that with other leagues like the EPL and MLS having sporadic play, they're actually putting 3 or 4 different matches on a week, which is great for our clubs and our communities. And then that will continue next year, where we're also looking to potentially add a USL coast-to-coast type show. And this is something that was tried, I think, back in 2017, and kind of ended not in the best way, but USL was in a very different spot at that point. And so we're ready to try it again. We're ready to have the narrative, the dialogue across all of our clubs and grow with that partnership at XM. Again, it's always great when we get to have USL positioned alongside EPL, MLS, UEFA Champions League, and USL all in the same sentence. That's where you want to be.
So then what's the next frontier?
Well, there's actually 2 things. It's a great question. So I mentioned our partnership with ESPN. We love that, and we love the numbers that we've seen both on linear and also ESPN Plus. But we have a very cool element that they added this last time around, which was ESPN Deportes. And so we have about 12 matches this year on Deportes. And when you think about the USL footprint, we have, in many ways, we have the strongest Hispanic or Mexican-American marketplace with the cities that we're in of any professional soccer league. So when you think about San Antonio, El Paso, Phoenix, San Diego, Las Vegas, these are really brand. If you're a company or you're a media provider looking to get to the Mexican American or Hispanic American audience, those are all on your target list of cities. Not to mention places like Atlanta and LA and some others where we have an MLS2 presence. So we're really going to dig deep with that audience and that, let's call it native soccer fan in USL, and the Spanish-speaking household maybe, or even second, third generation acculturated Spanish-speaking household. And then the second area that we're focused on is continued international expansion. USL has returned to play. MLS has returned to play. NWSL has returned to play. So many other leagues around the world have faltered, and I can't criticize them because the health and safety has to come first. And we are just, in some ways positioned to be able to deliver this, but we do believe as we are working with our players union to get that finalized, our first ever CBA with the union, and the talks have gone well. We believe that there's a message that North America is open for business, and that message is particularly important to players, to agents, and to administrators. And the next 5 to 6 years leading up to the World Cup will be a tremendous opportunity to import a higher level of talent than we would have ever thought possible at the USL level. And we all know that soccer is a global talent pool, and all you have to do to improve your product is essentially spend more money or attract people to a marketplace. And so we want to make sure we start first with an education and an awareness of what the USL brand of soccer is, the communities that we're in, the cities that players can live in, to apply their trade and go to work. And so, if we can dig deeper here with our target Hispanic audience domestically and then reach more of that target audience abroad, I think in 5 years' time we'll be in a really good spot.
And we will be keeping an eye on it as we go forward, and we'll be taking those steps with you. USL Executive Vice President Court Jeske, as I said, when we were coming in court, it took us entirely too long to circle back to catch up. Glad we got the chance to do so with the efforts going on with Flow with a W and with SiriusXM and SiriusXM FC. Great to catch up with you, and we'll be keeping an eye on stuff. And trust me, it will not be this long before we catch up for the next time when we get our updates with the USL. Thanks for hanging out with us for a 1v1.
Thanks so much, Sean. Be well.